super excited that everybody's here today. I'm Tami Gaines. I'm your host of Tami Talks. I want you to think about this like you're at that really awesome family gathering, and somehow random people end up in the kitchen solving the problems of the world and also solving their own problems. We get in the kitchen, we sit at the table, people are laughing and eating and cooking. And somehow some of the best advice comes out of those particular experiences. So that's the feel that we have here for Tami Talks. And I'm really excited to welcome my guest today, Sharon Weber. Sharon is, I can't say enough about her. She's a dear friend. I actually met her because she was my son's advocate during probably the toughest time of my life. But Sharon is knowledgeable in all things special needs, so I'm excited to welcome her to the show. But just to level set for everybody, once a month, I'm going to have Sharon and we're going to have guests and we're going to really talk about, this might be a bad word, Sharon, but I feel like it's having a special needs kid is almost like an affliction. Like we have a whole different, perspective
Outlook.
on normal life.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm excited. So needless to say, and we're going to get into it. I'm excited to talk about things that affect the families that have special needs kids once a month with Sharon and with our guests, because I do think it's something that needs to be amplified. There's not a lot of people out there doing it. So Sharon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tami. It's
Thanks for
good to
being
be
here.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. Hey, listen, so why don't we just start by telling a bit of your story? Talk to me about your family and about Chris.
Okay. So I have two children. One, my daughter, who's in college now, actually her senior year. Yay. Um,
Yay!
and so she's
One
about
less
to
bill to
graduate.
pay.
I know, right? Um, and a son, Christopher. He's 15 now. Whew.
Mm,
Um, and he has some special needs. He's on the autistic spectrum. He's got a little bit of ADHD going on. He's got severe OCD at this point, which developed later in life, which is not uncommon. And he's always been a sensory driven kid. So he has sensory integration. So a little bit about my story. I was married at the time. Actually, before I had Chris, I was working with children with special needs, ironically. Um, and then when I had him, uh, I had to stop actually working directly with children with special needs because it was just too overwhelming to work all day on the front line with children with special needs and then go home to my own and have the energy, the withspan to handle all that. So I transitioned to working with families, and that was easier. Still rewarding, but easier because I wasn't dealing directly with children. But I wanted to say it was really difficult, even though I had a lot of support early on because I had been surrounded by a team of people. It was still difficult. The journey, the stress, feeling overwhelmed, and having to deal with every aspect of advocacy, making sure he has the right supports, dealing with physicians, specialists. So it was just a very overwhelming journey. And the whole reason why I got involved in helping other families, um, is because I don't want any other family to feel like they're alone out there because it can be a lonely journey. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
um,
no, it's exhausting. I can't
yeah,
I can't imagine serving kids with special needs all day and then going home.
Right. So that
What's
was
your
just
moment?
very, very overwhelming. So kind of fast forwarding, listen, I was married to someone uh, who was
Mhm,
there, um, who was present, but not really like in the household, but wasn't really present. Uh,
mhm.
and I think it was part of the reason was because it was difficult for him to acknowledge that he has a son with special needs,
I
which is not uncommon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's totally normal. It wasn't until, like, um, I think Trey was about 5 or 6
Hmm. Same.
when his dad was like, "Oh, so this is real.
Hmm.
This is happening."
But even when it was real, like he was my husband, my ex-husband, I can say. Uh, I,
Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. Um, uh, Even when he was able to say, okay, Chris has special needs at age 5, but he never even accepted it. So, which was, something I had to process too, because that was very, difficult for me. Uh, for any parent to just deny their child in general is overwhelming and tough and
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
Sharon, you bring up such a great point. Um, well, we live in a different world now, right? It's just different.
Hmm.
And I remember growing up, my dad had a cousin, Larry, who we would say today had special needs. He had some sort of something on the spectrum. But nobody really talked about it. Larry was just at the family barbecues and the family, functions. Um, and there was like no conscious acknowledgement that there was something a little bit off about Larry. And so if
Right.
you imagine, like that was a long time ago.
Hmm.
So I think now, like in today's world, it's definitely difficult to have a partner that does not sort of acknowledge that our kids have special needs. They're not supportive. They're not living in reality. Like we could have a whole entire show about that.
Yep.
But I think a lot of people, I talk to families just like you do, that, some part of that family is living in denial, and it makes it really hard for you to embrace your own reality when the
Right.
people in your orbit aren't even embracing your reality.
Right. Because that's supposed to be your support, right? Your nuclear circle of support, and when you don't have it, it's tough.
Yeah.
um yeah.
So, just so the audience knows, I think people that know me know that I had premature twins. I'm going to go through this really quickly just so everybody knows we're coming from the same place. Anyway, I was married for 13 years, had 2 beautiful kids, and then I became unexpectedly pregnant with twins. And he gave me an ultimatum. I could have the twins or I could have him, but I couldn't have both. And I chose the twins. And the stress of the entire situation set me into like preterm labor. Um, and I had the twins they were just 25 weeks. Just from a calendar standpoint, they were exactly 6 months old when I had an emergency C-section. So they both had special needs. I don't even know if I ever told you that, Sharon, but Bria had significant special needs until she was like 4 and her brain turned on. Um, but yeah, there was a lot: physical therapy, speech therapy, feeding
Hmm.
therapy, doctors, meds, back and forth to the hospital. And then my son Trey was in the hospital for 18 months before he came home. And when he came home on a trach, he had a ventilator. Like I was launched into a world that I did not see coming and did not know how to navigate. So Sharon, one reason I appreciate you so much is that you helped me navigate a lot of what I didn't know.
Hmm.
Um, so let's talk about the day to day. I see there's a chat here from Karen listening from New York. I don't have a special needs child, but I know people who do. It's a struggle. Absolutely. Listen, there are more than 3 million children that have special needs of some sort, and that's as of 2019, and that is up 0.5% over 2018.
Right.
So, it's not going away. I think it's real, and I think the struggle, like the day-to-day struggle, is real.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Tammy, thank you for acknowledging Karen. For Karen, I would say for what you can do is just check in with with um, with the people who you know that are close to you that have children with special needs, and help any way that you can in whatever that means for that family, whether it's just maybe, you know, helping out an hour or maybe cooking dinner. I don't know. It could be
Yeah,
any little thing. Coming over once the kids are asleep and bringing a bottle of wine, just,
that
uh,
it all
like,
counts.
right. Just the little stuff means a lot. Um,
Yeah, I think people don't know how they can help, but you just rattled off a couple of things that are like real, like
mhm,
bringing dinner. Like that's one night you don't have to cook.
right.
You know what I mean? I had a
Right.
friend. Well, I have a bunch of friends that were like super supportive, but one just came over and did laundry.
Right.
I was like, "You
Simple
didn't come
stuff.
over here to do laundry." She's like, "I actually came over here to do laundry," and I couldn't believe, well, like, what a relief. Like that was
Right.
one less thing I had to deal with.
Right. And also the, I think one of the more important things too is just to be not to have judgment about
Mhm,
anything,
mhm,
right? Because you're not, if you don't have a child with special needs, um, there's certain things that you just can't understand.
mhm.
And it might seem, with what you receive from that friend or family member, um, you might say, "Oh, why did you do this?" or "Why are you doing that?" or "That sounds really gross," you know. Um, but just receive it, and you know, because sometimes we just need a sounding board. you know,
And
somebody
sometimes
just
you
needs to
literally
listen
just
and
need a
not be
break.
judged. I'm
You know what
sorry.
I mean? I said sometimes you just need a break.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Which goes into like our topic today, in reference to ways in which, um, families can help with resilience,
Yeah.
with their children at home. Self-care is like high priority on the list. I find it to be most helpful to take, a break, to take some time for yourself, whatever that may look like. It doesn't have to be all day because sometimes that's just not feasible. But even if it's just an hour in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, or when if your child attends school, just to take some time for yourself to decompress and get ready for whatever's coming,
Yeah.
because
So
something coming.
yeah, that is we're gonna take a break in a minute, but I do want to talk about this concept of resilience, especially when you have a family that has a child with special needs. By the way, that child could also be like 26 years old.
Absolutely.
But building resilience so that you can get up every morning and do it again is particularly important for this community. I am looking forward to sort of diving into some tips and some ideas, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We'll keep talking about self-care.
Okay.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Solivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Hey, welcome back to Tami Talks, Gab, Grub, and Growth. We are chatting about things that you would usually sit around the kitchen table to talk about. I'm super excited to have my very dear friend Sharon Weber as a guest on the podcast today. We share a lot in common, but mostly we both have sons that have pretty significant special needs. And you know, this show, I like to talk about resilience. And when I talk about resilience, I mean your ability to bounce back better. Taking a look at your relationships and your emotional response to challenges, and really creating a path forward whenever you go through anything. So this happens to be a big thing, right, Sharon? Like, this is a lifetime. This isn't like
Absolutely.
a hiccup. This
Lifetime.
isn't like a one-time thing. This is like literally like this is a lifetime, and who knows what's going to happen. So I thought it was important to talk about resilience to the families that are out there. Like, what are the tools and what are the tips that we can give so people can spring back better from this particular challenge, which I think it's really hard because it's ongoing, right? It's every day.
It's every day. And, you know, some days, again, are harder than others. So, again, you know, right before the break, you were talking about resilience and how important it is. And, you know, that's involving taking care of yourself and finding ways to get that resilience so you can have the energy to be able to provide for your family successfully.
Yeah, I think the first thing to go, listen, no matter what you're facing, the first thing that you're willing to let go of is taking care of yourself because you're so busy thinking about taking care of other people. And I know that I did that in the very beginning. Like, I was back and forth to the hospital. I had 2 kids in the hospital and 2 kids at home. And you're right. It's basically finding that energy every day. It's not going to happen if you're not taking care of yourself. So we find those moments, right? And it's moments. It's not hours. It's not an afternoon. Like, it could be 5. I mean, for me, it was just a couple of minutes just to go outside and walk in the park to catch my breath. And by the way, sometimes he was with me. That wasn't actually a total break. It was like, we're going to the park. I need a dose of nature.
Right.
But talk a bit about your thoughts around self-care. Like, how do you find the time to care for yourself when you're running a marathon every day, taking care of your kid that has special needs?
Well, there's a couple of things because it's really difficult when you're in the zone, right? I call it the zone because there's always something to do in relation to that child. You have to like stop for a minute and see, first of all, go to your supports if you have any, right? Because sometimes you don't. But find the people who are closest to you, who you really can count on and go to and ask. I mean, a lot of times, you know, I don't know, this is me, I'll speak for me. A lot of times, and even still now, I find a hard time asking for help.
Yeah.
And, you
Listen,
know,
I don't care what's going on. A lot of people have trouble asking for help
right.
over
So, you
normal
know,
stuff.
but once I asked, you know, there were some, you know, not a lot of people, but there were some people who stepped up in my life, right? And it was delayed because I had never asked for help.
Why is
So,
it so hard, Sharon? Why is it so hard for us to ask for help?
you know, part of it is I think that maybe, part of it was the rejection of no, right? Like to be,
Mhm.
no one likes rejection, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and it takes a lot for me to get up the nerve to ask for help, first of all, but then to hear a rejection, that's like
That's worse.
that
It's
that's
worse
even
than
worse.
asking. It's worse than asking is somebody saying
Right,
no.
right. It's like, oh, okay, right. So I think that's one thing. And I think, pride is another,
Mhm.
um, and feeling like you have to handle it all. I mean, I felt like I had to handle everything, because people may just not understand. But, there comes a time when, you just have to. You have to, step out on faith and say, look, either it is or it's not. And if it's not, I'll handle it. But if you can help, then I would very much appreciate it. And so I found those moments in um, certain people that were close to me. I asked for help and they were able to take Chris for a little while. Or when
Mhm.
I was over there, like, to hang out, I know that I can relax.
Mhm.
Relax, like let go. Because there are times when I go places and I'm always on, meaning always looking, to make sure Chris is okay. Where's he doing? Make sure apologizing for everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there
Yeah,
I can kind of let go and other people has him. So that's one thing. And then
that's a good
just some
sorry,
research.
Sharon. Let me jump in for 1 second. I think
Mhm,
that is such a important point
mhm.
because um there's not many people that you can count on when you're bringing your kid over there to be like, don't worry about it. It's all good. He wants
Right,
to, bang this and he wants to do that. Like, it's totally fine.
right,
I think it's really hard to find people that are just down with whatever is going to happen.
right,
So, when you talk about self-care, I would include that, like finding a community of people that get it. And if your kid's
absolutely.
gonna while out, they're fine with it. Like they're
Right.
totally fine with it. And I think that's hard. I haven't found many people.
No,
Um, I haven't found many people in my life that could handle that.
right,
And when you find it, yeah, you can take a deep breath. You could just sit back and be like, okay, I could relax. I could sit on the couch and just stare at the wall and not worry, that my kid is in danger or
right.
you know what I mean? I think
Mhm.
when you talk about self-care, I think that's really important to build your community around you.
Absolutely. That's very important because those little moments will save you. Those moments of time when you can be alone and you could take a break,
Mhm.
even though they might be far and few in between. But those
Mhm.
moments are though that community, that little community that I built, saved my life. you know, saved my life. Um, So I would
Yeah.
say that is, you're right, Tammy, that is very important to build a community around you. And that's, with support groups, or organizations, um, you know, that you trust and that have been tested and tried, meaning it's nice to have recommendations from other people. Um,
Yeah, you turned me on to Nassan's place.
Nassan's place, yes.
Nassan's place. You turned
Mhm.
me on. That was the first time I took Trey out publicly
Mhm.
without any regard for what was going on because everybody there had a child with special needs. And if I think we went to the movies, that was the first time like we went to a movie.
Right. Mhm.
The movie theater was crazy. The kids were ripping and running. It was like any other person who paid money for a ticket to go see a movie, they expect quiet, right? They want to watch
Right.
the film.
Right.
I was like, nobody actually cares. These kids are cutting up. They're loud. Nobody's watching the movie. I brought my other kids with me. I thought that was so powerful. to be in
Mhm.
an environment where actually nobody cared.
Right.
Like
That was
what they were doing,
that's
running up and down the aisles. Like it was a game changer for me.
yeah. That was actually the first place that I don't know if it was the movies though, but that was the first one of her events was the first place I actually took Chris, and I felt like I was able to relax. Not the first time, but like after taking him to a couple of events and understanding that, you're in a very supportive community there. So, which means that other mothers, she has help, that people will just jump in if needed, and no matter what is going on. So
Yeah.
that's like a really, that was a blessing to me. And I was like, oh, well, shoot, this is wonderful. you know?
Well, there was also a piece that was like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Right.
Because when you're
Right.
in the thick of it, I feel like no one has any idea what is going on behind these closed doors. There's
Absolutely.
pure mayhem. But
Yep.
then when I went there and I saw like all these other people with their kids, I just felt like, all right, it's not as lonely as I thought it was going to be.
Exactly. Exactly. And then there's another organization that I want to put out there too. It's called We've Got Friends, and that's an organization that are for more teens to hang out, to make friends, to do, whatever they want to do. Sometimes it's purely activity driven. Other times it's, you can join an activity if you want to, or you could just hang out. And I think that's great for teens, right? Because they need peers of their own to be able to hang out with and feel comfortable.
Yeah, we're getting to that point. Trey is 16.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's like socialization that needs to happen, which is often delayed
Yes,
because
absolutely.
for a million reasons. Like,
Hmm.
they're not in normal classrooms. And when I
Right,
say normal, I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see me.
right,
Um,
right.
but there are like activities that go on. I was talking to my daughter about the prom yesterday. Like,
Hmm.
there's just some stuff that I think a lot of people take for granted. Um, that I think are memories that our kids could be having if they
Hmm.
were like in the right environment.
Right.
Um, so Sharon, give another tip. So we talked about self-care, which I think is extremely important and not enough conversation around it.
Hmm.
But how about another
Absolutely.
tip for resilience? Like, for as people go through their day, you know.
I would say have a plan, right? So, which means that you might have to set a schedule, not a rigid schedule, but like a schedule that that you do on a regular basis with your child. Um, and if that schedule is going to change, prepare them as much as possible prior to the change, as much as you can. Like, let them know that there's going to be a change. Let them know what that change is going to be. And even if even if your kids are nonverbal or verbal, you can talk through some uncomfortable feelings that they may have in reference to the change and assure them that it's going to be okay.
I have a smile on my face because I have a son who does not have special needs and he needs that anyway. Like,
Right, right. So
anything might possibly change. Like, give me some notice.
right, right. So that's good for like kids that don't have
Life.
special needs. That's good for everybody, honestly.
It's a life skill. Yeah, no, it definitely feels like a life that needs to be developed. But we're gonna quick break, and when we come back, let's keep talking about like this idea of like a schedule. I think it's good for everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soul Liberty team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Hey, it's Tami, the very proud and excited host of Tami Talks podcast. I'm here with my very, very good friend, Sharon Weber. She is the Chief Engagement Officer and the co-founder of Indigo Kidz, which we'll talk about like at the end of the show. But Sharon, before the break, you were talking about the importance of a schedule.
Mhm.
And I was sort of joking because I don't think that's a special needs kid thing. I think that is a general like parenting thing. Like have a schedule, be organized,
Mhm.
right? It's okay to
Yeah.
deviate from it, but we need to like there needs to be some sense of like here's what's happening.
Right. Exactly. I definitely based on my experience, not only with my own child, but other children, letting them know what's going to happen before it happens decreases the anxiety. And look, we all don't like the unknown, right? Sometimes we have to deal with it in certain aspects, but when we don't have to, my thing is, if we don't have to, then why put our children through it? And so a visual schedule helps with children that are verbal and nonverbal, because it places a reminder on what to expect, what they're doing throughout the day, what's next after a particular activity or event. And so visual schedules help tremendously. And that's with like real items. So in other words, if you're going, I don't know, might be going for a walk or have lunch at a certain time, or, going to pick up a sibling,
So what do you mean by visual? A visual schedule?
So that is a picture schedule. So usually it would be a picture of whatever is going to take place. So if it's mealtime, it would be a picture of whatever they're used to eating. Even if you have to I've done this, take a picture of the actual item. And so it's a picture of the actual item that they're going to eat, whether it's a sandwich, whether it's cereal, whether it's oatmeal, and then cut it out. And that would be like first, like say breakfast, and then have the name underneath the actual visual item. So it would be like real item, like something that they can identify, and let them know that, okay, first mealtime, and it will be a picture of oatmeal. I'm just going by what my son, he eats oatmeal every day. So, oatmeal, then it's, brushing the teeth. So I would have a picture of him, or a picture of somebody brushing with the toothbrush, brushing their teeth. And then the next thing that's going to happen, and then the next thing. So it's a visual picture, a visual itemization of exactly what's going to happen during that day.
There's something sort of calming and relaxing about that idea, because it also forces you to schedule your day. And what I found is you can agree or disagree. Like sometimes those days they just run. Like there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something comforting about like a schedule, not just for them, but for us. Like This is what's happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I find it helpful now. I jot down like to-do lists. Okay, this is what I have to get done throughout the day. And so as I accomplish them or don't, right, I like cross out those items. And then those items that are still outstanding can go for the next day, right? And then I add to the list. So yes, it does help with organization a lot.
And then we laugh because there's those things that we just keep pushing to the next day, to the next
The
day,
next
to the
day,
next
I know.
day, which means to me they never were intended to be done in the
Right,
first place.
right, right.
We're really serious. Okay, and do you have another tip?
Yes, actually, there's one more tip that I do have is stay positive, right? Like even if something doesn't go right, right, which typically happens, um, this is where that self-care comes into play. So you have the energy to stay positive through a meltdown or a challenge, or if
Wait,
they're not
ours or
feeling.
theirs? Ours or theirs? The
No,
meltdown.
their challenge,
So,
the
because I've had
children's
my share
challenge.
of meltdowns. Just clarifying.
Right. Well, well, with meltdowns in general, I think we all have them. It's how we recover, right? So,
Mhm.
and if you do have to have a meltdown with a child, right, which I have done very early on,
Mhm.
uh, you have your meltdown and it's okay with your child, but you have to pull it together. So that's again where that resilience and self-care comes in, that you're able to like pull yourself together, even if you have to take a moment and walk into another room for a minute, as long as that child is safe, you know regroup, and then come back and deal with whatever the issue is, because there's usually always an underlying issue why they're having a meltdown. That's another thing I want to say.
Yeah.
The last thing, I know we're running out of time, right?
No, you're good. We're good.
Well, okay. So the one last thing is with a child also, if you're introducing something new, or something's going to happen different, creating a social story is always nice too. It's basically a story of people that they can identify with, um, involving whatever is uh, starting with something familiar and then adding that unfamiliar either event or person involved, and going through different scenarios of like feelings or uncomfortable feelings, or what may happen. So I find creating social stories helps as well. So like, and you can go through it with a child to help them understand exactly what's going to happen, explain this scenarios, and expected behaviors that are involved. And that helps with transition of unfamiliar situations or events.
Yeah, I have a very so just so everybody knows, when we talk about social stories, they could be visually driven.
Hmm.
You could talk through them.
Right.
Um, so my son he speaks, not sure how much he comprehends around certain things, but his grandfather died last Thanksgiving. And I said, like, how am I going to tell him? Like, that was a really big deal. I know I talked to you about it. I talked to his counselor about it.
Hmm.
And they use social stories. Like they created what it looked like a comic book
Right.
of like, here's all of your great memories with your grandpa. We had a bunch of pictures of him and grandpa. And then we got to the end. It's like, you know what? Grandpa's not gonna come to visit. Grandpa, I'm trying to remember, like, at the end, like, you're gonna remember grandpa in your mind.
Hmm.
Like, you'll have dreams about your grandpa.
Yep.
Um, but we never ever talked about the fact that he passed away.
Yeah, that's a difficult.
That was a
That
tough
is
one. That was a
that's
tough
that's
one.
a really tough one. But yeah, social stories are good. And again, because my dad 2 years ago passed away as well, and I had to go through the same thing. And I talked to the counselor and the school and everything. And the social stories are the way that we went. And you know what? Periodically, he still talks about grandpa. And I feel like, you know what? Okay, because grandpa must be around you, and that's okay, right? Like, You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. It's a good thing.
it's a
We know
good
they're
thing.
always, even when they pass, they're still with us.
Right, right, exactly.
Um, so Sharon, I'm super excited to do this every month with you. I feel
Absolutely.
like
Me
you
too.
have so much information. There's so many families out there that want to have this discussion. Um, so I hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about Indigo Kids. So this is both of our passion projects, right? But can you talk a bit about Indigo Kids
Yeah,
and
sure.
why we founded it and
Yeah,
all of that?
absolutely. Through both of our journeys, even though, we both have children with special needs, the journeys look different. And we went through different challenges. But one thing we did have in common is that there are a lot of information out there, and a lot of navigating that you have to do to find each piece of information. Um, and sometimes there's gaps in information and you're just struggling trying to find it or trying to piece something together. And like we talked about before in reference to supports, that system that we talked about that is good to have around you, that community. So, you know, the goal of Indigo Kids, um, is to help members have a better experience than we had in reference to services, supports, helping to navigate. So we help power everyone to navigate through their journey, from a place of strength. And you don't feel so alone in your journey. I don't want, and I know Tammy feels the same way, and she could speak herself, but any way that I can help another family navigate and find resources and help them to go through this journey a little bit more smoother than we had to go through, that's my passion. And so that's why Indigo Kids was created.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I feel the same way. I feel like for me, it was really lonely. It was really hard. And
Mhm.
I wasn't just dealing with Trey. He has a twin sister, older brother and sister. Like I was a single mom with 4 kids. Um, and it did feel lonely. So, and by the way, like you said, the information is scattered and it's fragmented and there's no one place to get it.
Right.
But I think what's interesting about Indigo Kids is that we're talking about real world stuff. Like there's a travel piece of Indigo Kids, which is like if you have to travel with your kid,
Mhm.
we can help you navigate door to door. We can help you figure that out. Medical supplies. So my son is on oxygen, on a bunch of things. And like, where do you find discounts? All of that is so hard to navigate.
Mhm.
So to me, I'm excited about Indigo Kids because it's a one-stop shop
Absolutely.
for information and resources that are normally like really hard to find.
Yeah.
So, Sharon,
Mhm.
you are my girl. Super excited to have you on. I love your children. I love Chris. I love Asia. You're a survivor. We're survivors.
We're both survivors.
We're both survivors. So I'm just excited to talk about this. And hopefully people will write in, like not just on Facebook, on YouTube. Like you guys
Mhm.
can write your comments and tell us stuff that you want to talk about. Um,
Absolutely.
Next week, I have a former NFL New York Giant player coming on to talk about what we can learn from sports and resilience. So I'm excited about that. And Sharon, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks
And
for
I want to thank
having me.
everybody for listening.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed myself.
More than welcome. I'm like roping you right back into this next month. Okay, everybody, have a fantastic day. Stay resilient. Look forward to talking to you next week.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.